All right, so every year, February 14th comes around, right? And we're just buried in all these traditions. But what if the story we think we know is, just scratching the surface? In this explainer, we're going to peel back those layers on St. Valentine and find the absolutely incredible and maybe even a little challenging story hiding underneath. I mean, you know the drill. Chocolates, flowers, cards. It's all about these big romantic gestures. You see heart-shaped stuff everywhere. It's this huge commercial holiday, really, all built around the idea of romance.
But what if the real story, the one that started it all, has way less to do with chocolate hearts and a lot more to do with pure defiance? I'm talking about a head-on collision between the might of the Roman Empire and the deep personal faith of one man.
So here's the plan for our little journey. First, we're going to get into the forbidden love story that's right at the center of this legend. Then, we'll look at the sacred belief that drove him to do it. After that, we'll see how that original meaning kind of got lost in translation over the years. And finally, we'll get to that one fateful message that, believe it or not, sparked this whole global tradition.
Okay, let's go back, way back. Forget the greeting card aisle for a second. Picture this, we're in the Roman Empire, 3rd century, and right in the middle of all this is our guy, a priest named Valentine.
Now, to really get Valentine's story, you got to understand the world he was living in. The Roman Empire was just constantly at war. And the emperor, he had this idea that marriage made for terrible soldiers. So he drops this bombshell of a decree: no more marriage for soldiers, period. But Valentine, being a priest, saw this as just a massive injustice. So what did he do? He defied the emperor. He started performing secret weddings for these soldiers. And that single act of defiance is what would ultimately cost him everything.
And the emperor's logic from his point of view was brutally simple. He figured a man with a wife, a family, well, that's a man who has something to lose, something that might make him think twice before charging into battle. But a single soldier? In the emperor's eyes, that was a much better weapon for the empire, more effective, and frankly, more expendable. Which of course brings us to the million-dollar question: why? I mean, why would anyone risk being executed for this? To get that, we have to really wrap our heads around the fact that for Valentine, marriage wasn't just some social contract. No, it was something so much deeper.
And this right here, this is the absolute heart of it all. For Valentine, marriage wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a sacrament. And in his faith, a sacrament is this incredibly sacred ritual, a way to directly connect with God's grace. So by telling these soldiers they couldn't get married, the emperor wasn't just committing a civil injustice, he was cutting them off from a crucial part of their faith. And for Valentine, that was a line in the sand the emperor had absolutely no right to cross.
This quote from St. Paul really helps you feel the spiritual weight of this whole thing. See, the early church had this powerful belief that taking part in sacraments when you weren't in what they called a state of grace was a really, really big deal. So by blocking soldiers from the sacrament of marriage, the emperor, from Valentine's perspective, was literally putting their souls in danger. This wasn't about personal feelings for him. This was a sacred duty, one he was absolutely prepared to die for.
So, how in the world did we get from a martyr dying for a sacred vow to the holiday we have today? It's a huge leap, right? Well, somewhere along the way, over all those centuries, the original message just got lost. The focus shifted, and I mean dramatically, from this sacred defense of marriage to something else entirely.
And this chart really lays it out. The transformation is just stark. The original point was all about defending marriage as this lifelong sacred thing. But the modern focus, it's all about celebrating romantic feelings, usually with stuff you buy at a store. That's a universe away from the sacred sacramental union that Valentine literally gave his life to protect.
Now, the source material we're looking at makes the case that this big cultural shift has had some real consequences. It connects the dots between how we view marriage now and some of the struggles young people face today, arguing that maybe there's a need to bring back some of that spiritual guidance and formation.
Okay, but there's one last piece to this story, and it's the part that's really echoed through the ages. It all happens while Valentine is locked away in prison, waiting for his own execution. So the tradition says that he became friends with his jailer's daughter. She was a young woman who couldn't see, and, well, the story goes that through his faith, he actually healed her. And just before they took him to be executed, he wrote her one last letter, a note of farewell. And at the bottom of that note, he signed it with just 3 words: "From your Valentine." And that's where it all comes from. The phrase we see on millions of cards today didn't start with some fleeting romance. It came from this final, profound act of faith and friendship
right in the face of death.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? The story is really a call to remember what this day was originally about. It's about valuing moral and spiritual education, and maybe seeing marriage as something more than just romance, but as that sacred covenant that St. Valentine thought was so important, he was willing to die for it.
And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. As we're celebrating with all the cards and the candy, have we maybe forgotten the core message here? That the very first Valentine wasn't a gift you could buy in a store, but was a defiant act of faith, a defense of a love that was meant to last forever.